Good morning, Year 5 and Year 6. I'm here to present to you Thursday's lesson for reading of Black Beauty. Without further ado, I will get started and begin to share my screen. Okay, so we will begin by looking at yesterday's answers as quickly as possible. So I'll just go through them. Hopefully you can see them as well. So number one, where is it believed the first horses lived, or the word in the text was originated? That's North America. In paragraph 2, give two ways, I should say TWO, horses were used by humans. So for meat, milk, and transportation, and any two of them would have been fine. The horses were first domesticated in Asia between 3000 and 4000 BC, but were mostly used for milk and meat. What does the word domesticated mean in this sentence? So the horses were tamed, so the horse can work on the farm and help humans, really. Being tamed is the opposite to being a wild animal, and we'll learn a lot more about that in Black Beauty. Why do you think Antarctica is the only continent horses are not found? Really, the conditions would be too difficult for them to survive. It's too cold. Question 5, what is the purpose of the brackets in paragraph 4? I said be specific. Writing gives more information, does not get a mark, so I see that a lot. It gives the reader an idea of how tall or heavy the horses actually are. They talk about inches. I don't know that much about inches, I work on centimeters, but by saying that it is about the height of Mr. Thomas, I can imagine now Mr. Thomas in my mind. I know how tall he is, and I can see how big the horse would be. Number 6, true or false, ponies are baby horses. That is false. They are a breed in themselves. I think descendant from the Iberian horse. Number 7, this breed is very rare to the point of almost being extinct. Find and copy one word that tells us there are not many of these breed of horses. So I would accept rare or extinct for that, okay? Because I think actually both would suggest that. What is a group of horses called? Simple retrieval there. It's called a herd. For what reason do horses graze throughout the day? Their stomachs are quite small, so it takes them time to digest the food. Otherwise, they can't take on a lot at one time. Find evidence from the text to show that breaking a horse in is difficult. It mentioned that the rider needs to have experience to break in the horse, and also there was lots of different things that the horse had to be able to do, and you may have written a few examples of that. So be able to carry a chaise or a cart, be able to react to different speeds, keep calm in different situations, lots of different things they have to do. And finally, how would you know if a horse was showing a negative emotion? Because of their facial expressions or the look on their face was the answer to that. And final, fact or opinion, horses are the most popular animals on earth. Definitely opinion. They're not my favorite animal, though I do love them. But they're not my favorites. That's definitely an opinion. Horses are vegetarian. That is a fact. They don't eat meat. Horses eat lots of grass and hay. This was probably the most debatable one for me. They do eat, I suppose, a lot of grass and hay, but it said not all of them. So I would still say that's an opinion. Tricky one, that I would say, though. Horses will be used by humans for centuries to come. Definitely opinion. We're predicting. We don't know that. We can't see exactly what's going to happen in the future. And finally, E, a baby horse is called a foal. That is definitely a fact. You would find that in the dictionary. Okay, for today's lesson, not too much vocabulary to learn. There's just a picture there of a water mill. So you can see the water powers that, and it can, it's a type of hydropower, really. That's a water power to press certain things. There's a word particular, which means fussy. If you're a bit particular about keeping your room tidy, it might say that you're a bit fussy. To grow fond of someone, you've probably understood this, but that's like begin to like someone, okay? It maybe takes a bit of time because you grow fond. It might not have happened at the very start. And liberty, I think this is a really important word for this text, and possibly one that will become a theme of the book. And really, when we're talking about liberty here, we're talking about your freedom. So actually, at the moment in the coronavirus, our liberty, our freedom to go out anytime we want has been restricted. So I think that's a good word for us to think about. Okay, you're going to be having some true or false questions. I'm going to start reading the text now. So settle in, relax, get comfortable, and I'll begin. Chapter 5. A fair start. The name of the coachman was John Manley. He had a wife and one little child, and they lived in the coachman's cottage, very near the stable. The next morning, he took me into the yard and gave me a good grooming, brushing. And just as I was going into my box, with my coat soft and bright, the squire came in to look at me and seemed pleased. "John," he said, "I meant to have tried the new horse this morning, but I have other business. You may as well take him around after breakfast. Go by the common and the highwood, and back by the watermill and the river. That will show his paces." "I will, sir," said John. After breakfast, he came and fitted me with a bridle. He was very particular in letting out and taking in the straps to fit my head comfortably. Then he brought the saddle, but it was not broad enough for my back and wide enough. He saw it in a minute and went for another, which fitted. He rode me first slowly, then a trot, then a canter, and when we were on the common, he gave me a light touch with his whip, and we had a splendid gallop. "Ho, ho, my boy," he said as he pulled me up. "You would like to follow the hounds, I think." As we came back to the park, we met the squire and Mrs. Gordon walking. They stopped and John jumped off. "Well, John, how does she go?" "Straight, sir," answered John. "He is as fleet as a deer and has a fine spirit too, but the lightest touch of the rein will guide him." Down at the end of the common, we met one of those travelling carts, hung all over with baskets, rugs, and such like. You know, sir, many horses will not pass those carts quietly. He just took a good look at it, and then went on as quiet and pleasant as could be. They were shooting rabbits near the highwood, and a gun went off close by. He pulled up a little and looked, but did not stir a step to right or left. I just held the rein steady and did not hurry him, and it's my opinion he has not been frightened or ill-used while he was young. "That's well," said the squire. "I will try him myself tomorrow." The next day I was brought up for my mother. I remembered my mother's counsel and my good old master's, and I tried to do exactly what he wanted me to do. I found he was a very good rider and thoughtful for his horse too. When he came home, the lady was at the hall door, and he rode up. "Well, my dear," she said, "how do you like?" "It's exactly what John said," he replied. "A pleasanter creature I never wish to mount. What shall we call him?" "Would you like Ebony?" said she. "He is as black as ebony." "No, not Ebony." "Will you call him Blackbird, like your uncle's horse?" "No, he is far handsomer than old Blackbird ever was." "Yes," she said, "he is really quite a beauty, and he has such a sweet, good-tempered face, and such a fine, intelligent—" "What do you say to calling him Black Beauty?" "Black Beauty? Why, yes, I think that is a very good name. If you like, it shall be his." And so it was. When John went into the stable, he told James that master and mistress had chosen a good, sensible English name for me that meant something, not like Marengo or Pegasus or Abdallah. They both laughed, and James said, "If it was not for bringing back the past, I should have named him Rob Roy, for I never saw two horses more alike." "That's no wonder," said John. "Didn't you know that Farmer Gray's old Duchess was the mother of them both?" I had never heard that before, and so poor Rob Roy, who was killed at that hunt, was my brother. I did not wonder that my mother was so troubled. It seems that horses have no relations, at least they never know each other after they are sold. John seemed very proud of me. He used to make my mane and tail almost as smooth as a lady's hair, and he would talk to me a great deal. Of course, I did not understand all he said, but I learned more and more to know what he meant and what he wanted me to do. I grew very fond of him. He was so gentle and kind. He seemed to know just how a horse feels, and when he cleaned me, he knew the tender places and the ticklish places. When he brushed my head, he went as carefully over my eyes as if they were his own, and never stirred up any ill temper. James Howard, the stable boy, was just as gentle and pleasant in this way, so I thought myself, well, I was another man who helped in the yard, but he had very little to do with Ginger and me. A few days after this, I had to go out with Ginger in the carriage. I wondered how we would get on together, but except laying her ears back when I was led up to her, she behaved very well. She did her work and did her full share, and I never wished to have a better partner in double harness. When we came to a hill, instead of slackening her pace, she would throw her weight right into the collar and pull away straight up. We had both the same sort of courage at our work, and John had often to hold us in than to urge us forward, so it was more often he had to hold us in than to push them forward. He never had to use the whip with either of us. Then our paces were much the same, and I found it very easy to keep step with her when trotting, which made it pleasant, and Master always liked it when we kept step well, and so did John. After we had been out 2 or 3 times together, we grew quite friendly and sociable, which made me feel very much at home. As for Merrylegs, he and I became great friends. He was such a cheerful, plucky, good-tempered little fellow that he was a favourite with everyone, and especially with Miss Jessie and Flora, who used to ride him about in the orchard and have fine games with him and their little dog Frisky. Our master had 2 other horses that stood in another stable. One was Justice, a roan cob used for riding or for the luggage cart. The other was an old brown hunter named Sir Oliver. He was past work now, but was a great favourite with the master, who gave him the run of the park. He sometimes did a little light carting on the estate, or carried one of the young ladies when they rode out with their father, for he was very gentle and could be trusted with a child, as well as Merrylegs. The cob was a strong, well-made, good-tempered horse, and we sometimes had a little chat in a paddock, but of course I could not be so intimate with him as with Ginger, who stood in the same stable. Chapter 6, Liberty. So that was one of the words we looked at before. So if you need to, you can just go back to the screen. You see there it means freedom. So chapter 6, Liberty. I was quite happy in my new place, and if there was one thing that I missed, it must not be thought I was discontented. All who had to do with me were good, and I had a light, airy stable and the best of food. What more could I want? Well, my liberty. For 3 years and a half of my life, I had had all the liberty I could wish for. But now, week after week, month after month, and no doubt year after year, I must stand up in a stable night and day, except when I am wanted, and then I must be just as steady and quiet as any old horse who has worked 20 years. Straps here and straps there, a bit in my mouth, and blinkers over my eyes. Now, I am not complaining, for I know it must be so. I only mean to say that for a young horse full of strength and spirits, who has been used to some large field or plain where he can fling up his head and toss up his tail and gallop away at full speed, then round and back again with a snort to his companions, I say it is hard never to have a bit more liberty to do as you like. Sometimes, when I have had less exercise than usual, I have felt so full of life and spring that when John has taken me out to exercise, I really could not keep quiet. Do what I would, it seemed as if I must jump or dance or prance, and many a good shake I know I must have given him, especially at the first, but he was always good and patient. Steady, steady, my boy, he would say. Wait a bit, and we will have a good swing and soon get the tickle out of your feet. Then, as soon as we were out of the village, he would give me a few miles at a spanking trot, and then bring me back as fresh as before, only clear of the fidgets, as he called them. Spirited horses, when not enough exercise, are often called skittish, when it is only play, and some grooms will punish them, but our John did not. He knew it was only high spirits. Still, he had his own ways of making me understand by the tone of his voice or the touch of the rein. If he was very serious and quite determined, I always knew it by his voice, and that had more power with me than anything else, for I was very fond of him. I ought to say that sometimes we had our liberty for a few hours. This used to be on fine Sundays in the summertime. The carriage never went out on Sundays because the church was not far off. It was a great treat to us to be turned out into the home paddock or the old orchard. The grass was so cool and soft to our feet, the air so sweet, and the freedom to do as we liked was so pleasant, to gallop, to lie down and roll over on our backs, or to nibble the sweet grass. Then it was a very good time for talking, as we stood together under the shade of the large chestnut tree. And that is the end of chapter 6 and the end of what we'll read today. So, children, your task, which will be a quiz on Purple Mash, is to answer these true or false questions. If you don't have access to the Purple Mash, then you can email the answers in. An additional task there is to explain why the false answers are false. Okay, when I do these statements, I'm not just plucking things out of thin air. It's something that's talked about in the text, and I want you to say what the truth actually is, and we've done that a lot in class. So if you think it is false, there were 3 people in the Manley family, that's false, you'd have to say, how many people were there in the Manley family then? Some other reading points that I thought were quite interesting and something you might want to discuss or write up and send to us. Why did you think Darky, or he's now got a new name, but I don't want to give the answer away, understand about Mother being so upset when Rob Roy died during the hunt? Why was this a surprise to our narrator? Darky wanted liberty. This is important, I think. What about Darky's life meant that the horse was not free, did not have the freedom? And how did he feel about it? Well, there's some mixed emotions there. And then maybe just a little challenge. If you could give the horse your own name, a different name, what would it be and why? That would be really interesting to hear from you. Okay, I'm going to shut this down now. So really interested to see your answers. Remember, Purple Mash or the email address. Have a lovely day. The sun is shining. I'm still in school, but it's been nice to do this video. Take care. Bye.